I've gotten a lot of questions lately about our live stream, specifically about the pace at which we cut cameras and why we have camera ops on the stage. People seem to think that it's distracting or not necessary, and I feel like I want to present a few reasons that I can point people to when I inevitably get asked this question moving forward. First of all, I'm going to play some examples of a recent worship service here so you can see what it is that people are actually seeing when they're asking these questions. We run 4 different cameras. There are 2 actually in our main auditorium and then 2 that are on the stage. And we definitely change pace with the song, trying to match the energy of the band and what's actually happening in the music. This results in a lot of the cuts getting faster a lot of the time as the song builds. However, you can also see that in the slower moments of songs, we slow things down in order to match the overall tone and mood of the song, and make sure that things don't feel weird or out of place. We like to show instruments during especially prominent musical portions of the songs, when they're really the ones that are driving the moment forward. That could be during a straight instrumental, or even just when an instrument has a particularly prominent riff that's being played. Okay, so now that you've seen that, you have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to be coming from for the rest of the video, and maybe you agree with people that things are cut too fast, or that maybe it's a little too distracting, but allow me a minute to explain. From a purely philosophical level, I like to think that the job of the livestream team is actually pretty similar to that of the band, and that is, we help set the tone for worship. The biggest difference is that we're doing it visually rather than auditorily. And similarly to the band, we communicate things through different pacing and through different camera angles, just like they would with different riffs or lyrics in the songs. So, first of all, could we have a live stream without having a bunch of angles and cutting quickly between them? Sure, we could, in the same way that you can have a worship band without having an electric guitar or drums. And maybe some people think that's how it should be done, but hey, I'm not here to discuss the intricacies of modern worship music with you, just drawing a comparison. The next reason that we do things this way is that I truly think it's just more engaging. And look, I know that word engagement gets a lot of flack sometimes, especially when it comes to worship, but hear me out for a second. As the livestream director, my job is to make sure that people watching from home can still draw near to the throne of God and worship Him, just like they'd be able to if they were actually in our church building. Now, obviously, the Holy Spirit is not contained to the church auditorium, so this should be possible no matter how I'm crafting the live stream. But we do things in the room to create a certain environment during worship. We dim the overhead lights, we craft a pleasing soundscape, we have people worshiping alongside us, we set up an altar for prayer. There are a lot of elements that can help put people into a posture of worship. Online church doesn't have that luxury. Instead, we get compressed audio and a video feed that someone is watching on a 6-inch screen or maybe a laptop or a TV if we're lucky. Oh, and those devices send people notifications and buzz in their hands, and there's no one around to judge them if they check it during the middle of the song. So by creating something that's visually appealing and engaging, we're attempting to help the viewer tune out distractions and instead draw them into a worship posture in order to help them have an experience with the Holy Spirit in their living room. Looking back to one of our live streams from a few years ago, I don't think we were doing nearly as good of a job at that. Even though the shots are a lot more simple and things are moving way more slowly, I personally think it's almost more distracting to a viewer. Not only that, but if you're familiar with our church, this isn't actually what it felt like to be in the room. So the contrast to the viewer is an added distraction too. And hey, maybe it's just not in my now preferred style, but that's kind of my point too. People can be distracted by literally anything, any style, any lack of motion, any motion. I also believe that we as creatives worship God partially through creating beautiful things with the gifts He's given us. For some, that can be creating a stunning painting or maybe a magnificent sculpture. For me, it's trying to create a cool looking video of a worship service. I'm simply trying to serve and worship God the best that I can with the gifts that He's given me. Now, back to the question of, isn't this distracting? And I'm going to tackle this in 2 different ways. First, is it distracting to worshipers actually in the room? And second, is it distracting to worshipers watching online? In the room, I'd say, sure, setting up cameras and other video gear can definitely be distracting. But we've done the best that we can to make sure that we're not detracting from the worship service. For example, like most churches, all of our camera ops are wearing black, so as to not catch your eye super easily. We also don't have anybody manning a camera that's actually walking through the congregation during the service. Any of the cameras in the room are stationary or on our dolly, but that just moves back and forth and doesn't sneak up behind people as they're worshiping. As for our two cameras on the stage, those have evolved a lot over time. Originally, we didn't have any camera ops up there. We stayed away from it. And when we did start adding them, we stayed completely off the side of the stage, so we weren't visible in the room at all. Over time, we slowly crept farther and farther out until now we reach out pretty far, though we make sure never to cross the middle of the stage, and we always stay along the edges or the very back row of the stage. In my eyes, those camera ops aren't really any more distracting than, say, the bassist grooving along to the music. Are there people who are still distracted by it? Probably. But there's also people distracted by the person sitting across from them, who's wearing the perfume they received as a gift from Bob Vance while he was in Metropolitan Orlando, and it's made with real pine. Look, we can't eliminate all distractions, but we can definitely do our best to minimize them. Now, back to the person watching from home. If we get too crazy with all of our switching, sure, it can definitely get distracting. And that's why we go to great lengths to train our camera ops and our directors the best that we can in order to make sure that they're capturing the service in a non-distracting manner. But hey, we're not perfect. Sometimes we go a little fast or we take a bad shot. Like, it happens. Just like it happens that all band members will hit a sour note or sing a little off key sometimes. We try to minimize those mistakes, but we also know that they're inevitable. And if the style of the live stream is distracting, well, not everyone likes the same things. And honestly, if you're distracted by the overall style, maybe you should just prioritize coming to church instead of watching online. So I hope that satisfies the question of why we do things the way that we do with our live stream. And if I can leave you with one more closing thought, there isn't one singular correct way to worship. You don't have to agree with someone else's method, but if you don't, you can still be happy and thankful that our same God is receiving the praise all the same. Until next time.